The sky above Vexilon burned with orange clouds and trails of smoke. The great capital city of the Thalkiri Empire was silent except for the sound of repair drones and echoing cries of injured soldiers. The war had ended badly. The enemy fleet had retreated, but the cost was terrible. Inside the central palace, the wounded soldiers bowed their heads. They feared not the enemy, but the sound that came from the throne hall, a sharp, furious roar that made the walls shake. Who repaired my armor? The voice belonged to Queen Zarentha, ruler of the Thalkiri. Her body was strong and tall, covered with silver chitin that glowed faintly in the dim light. But now her chest plate, the sacred royal armor, was cracked and lifeless. It was more than just metal. It was a symbol of her power, an artifact said to be forged in the heart of a dying star. No one dared to speak. Dozens of alien engineers stood frozen. Their heads were bowed, their mandibles trembling. The armor had been damaged during the last battle, when the queen herself led her warriors against the invaders. She had fought like a storm, but a plasma blast had shattered the armor's power core. Now even the royal engineers could not repair it. They had tried every ritual, every forge, every code. The armor remained cold and silent. Centuries of knowledge, Zarentha hissed, her voice low and dangerous, and not one of you can restore what was made by our ancestors. One of her servants finally stepped forward. My queen, the energy lines are burned beyond renewal. The living metal rejects all touch, her eyes glowed red. Then find someone whose touch it will accept, or I will find someone to replace you all. The engineers quickly bowed lower, begging for mercy. But the queen turned away from them, her wings twitching in anger and despair. She walked toward the armor stand, touching the cold plates with her clawed hands. It felt dead, and she could almost hear the silence laughing at her. The armor was not only her protection, it was her connection to the spirit of her people. Without it, she felt weak, incomplete, and exposed. Far away on the other side of the palace, a small group of humans had just arrived. They were part of a peace and reconstruction exchange, sent by the Human Federation to help rebuild after the war. Among them was Chief Engineer David Harlan, a man in his mid-30s with messy brown hair and a small scar above his eyebrow. His uniform was already stained with oil and dust. He was not a soldier. He was a builder, a fixer, someone who loved solving problems. As he walked through the corridors, he could feel the tension in the air. Alien guards stood tall with long weapons, watching the humans carefully. No one smiled. No one spoke. Friendly place, one of his teammates whispered. David gave a small grin. Could be worse. At least no one's shooting at us. They had been ordered to assist in basic repairs, generators, power conduits, and drones. But when they reached the engineering bay, David noticed a sealed door guarded by 2 Thalkiri soldiers. Behind it, faint golden light flickered, then died again. What's behind that door? He asked casually. The guard replied with a deep growl. Royal Forge. Off limits. Ah, got it, David said. But curiosity burned inside him like a spark. Later that night, when most of the alien engineers had left, David stayed behind to check the power grid. The palace was quiet now. The storm outside had calmed. He moved through the shadows, following the energy lines that ran along the wall. They all led toward that same sealed forge door. Something inside was draining huge amounts of power, and it was broken. He hesitated, then overrode the door's lock using his wrist tool. The door slid open with a hiss of steam. Inside, the air was thick with heat and strange metallic smell. In the center of the forge, on a glowing pedestal, stood the shattered armor. Even in its broken state, it was beautiful, smooth like liquid metal, but marked with deep cracks that pulsed faintly with dull light. David stepped closer, eyes wide. Well, you're a masterpiece, aren't you? He ran his scanner over it. The readings were bizarre. The armor was half machine, half living organism. It had neural circuits, bioreactive layers, and a heart-like energy core that seemed to beat slowly, though very faintly. Like it's alive, he whispered. He touched one of the broken edges gently. The surface shimmered for a moment, then glowed weakly under his fingers. His breath caught. It responded to human touch. Fascinated, he took out his tools. His hands moved carefully as he examined the damaged energy lines. The aliens had tried to weld it using brute force, but their tools were too hot, too rough. The circuits were delicate. They needed a gentler hand. He began cleaning the burn marks, realigning the channels, and inserting thin copper filaments from his own repair kit. He didn't even realize how much time had passed. The forge lights flickered brighter as he worked. The armor's heartbeat grew stronger. Suddenly, a sharp metallic voice broke the silence. "What are you doing?" David froze. At the door stood 3 Thalkiri guards, and behind them, the queen herself. Her eyes burned like twin suns. Her massive wings unfolded slightly as she stepped forward. David swallowed hard. Fixing it?" The room went deadly silent. Every alien stared at him in disbelief. The queen tilted her head slowly, her mandibles clicking. "You dare touch my armor, human?" He met her gaze calmly. "Yes, it was broken. I figured I could help." "Help?" Her voice rose. "That armor is older than your species' first breath. You would help it with your primitive tools?" David shrugged. "Doesn't matter how old it is. Energy lines are still energy lines. Circuits still need connection. Doesn't matter if you're human or insect royalty." The guard stepped forward, but the queen raised her hand to stop them. She was furious, yet curious. She could feel it. A faint pulse from the armor, something that hadn't happened in weeks. She walked closer, towering over him. "Show me," she ordered coldly. David nodded. He pointed to the armor's lower chest plate. "You see this? It's not dead, just burned out. Your people tried to reforge it using too much heat. The metal closed up before the energy could flow. I'm cleaning it up, reconnecting it slowly." He activated his scanner again. The readings brightened. A faint hum filled the room. For a moment, even the queen's expression softened. She could feel her connection to the armor returning, faint but real. "How?" she whispered. "How is this possible?" David smiled slightly. "You were treating it like a machine, but it's not. It's alive. You have to talk to it gently. You have to earn its trust." The queen blinked. "Trust? You speak nonsense." "Maybe," David said, stepping back, "but it seems to like me." The hum grew stronger. The armor glowed faintly with golden light, enough to make everyone gasp. For the first time since the battle, the queen's sacred armor was alive again, just a little. Then just as quickly the glow faded, and the forge went silent once more. The queen stared at the armor for a long moment, then turned her gaze back to David. "You will continue your work," she said finally. David blinked. "Wait, what?" "You have touched what none of my kind could. You will repair it, under my direct command. Fail, and I will personally end your species' peace treaty." He sighed. "No pressure, huh?" She didn't smile. "Guards, take him to the royal forge chamber. Prepare his tools. He begins at dawn." As the guards led him away, David couldn't help but grin. The challenge excited him. This was no ordinary job. It was a mystery, a living machine, and now an alien queen's personal test. Behind him, Queen Zarentha stood alone before her armor. She touched it once more. It felt slightly warm now, as if it had taken a breath. She whispered to herself, "A human. Repaired my armor?" The forge lights flickered in answer, as if the armor itself approved. Outside, the night sky of Vexilon shone with distant stars, silent witnesses to a new story beginning. A queen's pride had met a human's stubborn heart. Neither knew it yet, but this small act, one human repairing a queen's broken armor, would soon change the fate of both their worlds. Morning came early on Vexilon. The twin suns rose behind the black towers of the Thalkiri capital, turning the sky golden red. The city still carried scars from the last war, burned walls, broken domes, and empty streets. But inside the royal palace, something unusual was happening. In the heart of the forge chamber, Chief Engineer David Harlan stood surrounded by strange tools, glowing crystals, and alien guards who watched his every move. He was the only human allowed inside the Queen's sacred workshop. The Queen herself stood near the far wall, silent and unmoving. Her eyes never left him. She wanted to understand this small, soft creature who had dared to touch the royal armor, and somehow made it breathe again. The forge around them looked like a cathedral of light. Molten energy ran through transparent pipes, humming with power. The broken armor rested on a pedestal at the center, a thing of beauty and danger. Its smooth silver plates were covered in delicate runes that pulsed faintly whenever David approached. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and started scanning the armor again. His human tools looked clumsy compared to the Thalkiri equipment, but he trusted his instincts more than technology. "Permission to speak freely, Your Majesty?" he asked while adjusting his visor. You may speak, human, the Queen said, her voice calm but cold. This armor isn't just metal, David said. It reacts to life energy, bioelectric signals. Maybe that's why it worked when I touched it. It reads intent. You treated it like a tool, but it's more like a living partner. The Queen's wings shifted slightly. Our ancestors spoke of such things. They said the armor was forged in the heart of a star that was alive. But those are myths. Sometimes myths are just science we don't understand yet, David replied. One of the Thalkiri engineers hissed angrily. Human arrogance. You think you can explain our sacred relic with your simple machines? David didn't look up. I think everything can be fixed, if you respect it enough to listen. The Queen raised one clawed hand, silencing her people. Let him work. Hours passed. The forge grew hot and the sound of grinding and welding filled the air. David carefully cleaned each energy channel, connecting human-made wires to alien power veins. He hummed softly as he worked, an old habit from his days repairing ships in deep space. The Queen watched, curious. Why do you make sound when you work? He smiled without looking up. Helps me think. Makes the silence less heavy. She tilted her head. We work in silence to honor the forge. Well, David said, maybe the forge likes music. That simple line made the Queen pause. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Without fear, without formality, just honesty. It annoyed her, and yet, it made her strangely thoughtful. By evening, the armor began to glow again, a steady, soft heartbeat of golden light. Every Thalkiri in the chamber froze, staring in disbelief. Even the Queen stepped closer, eyes wide. It responds, she whispered. David looked tired but proud. Told you, it just needed someone to treat it gently. The Queen's claws brushed against the glowing surface. The armor warmed under her touch as if greeting her. A faint hum filled the room, the sound of ancient energy coming back to life. It knows me, she said softly. David nodded. And it remembers you. For a moment, the Queen looked almost human, her face calm, her expression filled with something close to wonder. But the moment didn't last. One of her advisors, Lord Trask, stormed into the chamber with several guards. My Queen, he cried. This is dangerous. The human touch is sacred technology. It could corrupt the armor. The Queen turned her gaze toward him, sharp and cold. He has done more in one day than our scientists did in years. Do not question my command. Lord Trask lowered his head but glared at David. The human just smiled faintly, as if used to being doubted. That night, when the forge fell silent, David was allowed a small resting chamber near the workshop. He sat on the metal bed, staring at the stars through a glass window. The twin moons reflected in his eyes. He recorded notes in his datapad. Bioreactive structure confirmed. Neural lattice responds to emotional stability, or maybe empathy. Queen seems connected mentally to the armor. Interesting. He leaned back, rubbing his eyes. Guess this is what happens when you sign up for intergalactic friendship missions, huh? Just then the door opened. Queen Zarentha entered, her tall figure outlined by the hallway light. The guard stayed outside. David stood quickly. Your Majesty, she gestured for him to sit. You may rest. I came to understand. Understand what? You said the armor needs trust. Machines cannot feel. Explain. David thought for a moment. Maybe not feel, but they can react. I've seen it. When people care about their work, their tools last longer. When they rush or get angry, things break. Maybe the armor was waiting for someone patient enough to care. The Queen folded her arms. Our people care more than anyone. We forge with devotion. Maybe, David said gently, but devotion born from pride is different from devotion born from love. That sentence hung in the air like a spark. The Queen studied him silently. She didn't like his words, but she couldn't deny they made sense. For years she had ruled through strength, not softness. The armor had obeyed her command, until the day it shattered in battle. Maybe it had stopped trusting her first. You speak boldly for one who stands before a queen, she finally said. He smiled. Engineers don't fix things by being shy. For the first time, she almost smiled back, just a small twitch at the corner of her mouth. You are strange. Human. I get that a lot. Over the next few days, they worked together in the forge. The Queen began to assist him, handing him tools, guiding energy flows with her claws. Their teamwork surprised everyone. She learned that David's methods were slow but precise, built on patience and intuition. He learned that the Queen's people valued discipline and ritual but often forgot curiosity. Together, they restored one piece of the armor each day. Each time a section was repaired, it would glow brighter, like the rebirth of a star. Other Thalkiri engineers began watching quietly from the corners. They could see how the Queen treated David differently now. She no longer called him human with disdain. She called him engineer. Still, tension grew among the nobles. Lord Trask whispered to others that the Queen was being manipulated, that the human had cast some spell on her armor. Jealousy burned in their eyes. One night, while David was alone in the forge, he noticed something strange. One of the armor's energy veins had been deliberately cut. Someone had tried to sabotage their progress. He frowned. That wasn't an accident. He quickly repaired the damage and set up security sensors. But before he could rest, a small explosion shook the chamber. Sparks flew from the power coils. Fire burst from the far wall. David threw himself forward, covering the armor with his body as debris rained down. Smoke filled the room. He could feel the heat burning his skin, but he refused to move. Not today, he muttered. You're not dying again. When the smoke cleared, the Queen and her guards rushed in. Her eyes went wide when she saw him lying beside the armor, covered in ash but alive. The armor itself shimmered brightly, untouched by the blast. David, she shouted, running forward, something no one had ever seen her do before. You fool, you could have died. He coughed and grinned weakly. Couldn't let your armor get scratched again. The Queen knelt beside him, touching the armor. It pulsed with strong golden light, stronger than ever before. Somehow the armor had shielded him in return. Her voice softened. It protected you. Maybe it finally trusts me, he said quietly. She looked at him, realizing what that meant. The armor had chosen to respond to a human, not her. But instead of anger, she felt a strange pride. This man had risked his life for something sacred to her people. No Thalkiri noble had ever done that. Bring him to the healers, she ordered, and double the guards. There will be no more sabotage. As they carried David away, the Queen turned back to the glowing armor. She could feel it now. The link between them was alive again, but somehow the human's essence had become part of it. The armor's energy sang with a new tone. Something softer, something human. She whispered, You risked your life for my legacy, little engineer. You may be fragile, but your heart is forged stronger than steel. That night, while David rested in the healing chamber, the Queen stood alone before the repaired armor. Her reflection shimmered on its glowing surface. Her thoughts were troubled but clear. Perhaps strength is not just in power, she murmured, but in kindness. Outside, the twin moons rose again over Vexilon, bathing the palace in silver light. Somewhere in the city below, humans and Thalkiri worked together for the first time, inspired by a story already spreading. The Queen's armor breathes again, and it was a human who gave it life. The next morning, the royal forge was alive with energy. Heat hummed through the walls, and the soft glow of the partially repaired armor lit the chamber like a sunrise. Chief Engineer David Harlan returned, bandages on his arms and soot on his uniform, but his eyes were sharp and alert. The small explosion the night before had not shaken his resolve. If anything, it had made him more determined. The Queen, Zarentha, stood nearby watching him work. Her wings were folded neatly, but her eyes never left him. Something about this human fascinated her. He worked with such confidence, such patience, and yet he didn't bow, didn't cower. Your Majesty, David said, I need to finish the chest plate today. The energy core is almost ready, but one of the conduits is misaligned. It's delicate work. She nodded once, a small gesture, and stepped closer. Proceed. I will observe. The other Thalkiri engineers lingered at the edges of the room, whispering among themselves. Lord Trask's glare burned into David's back. The human ignored him, focused on the armor. David's hands moved carefully, adjusting the biometal filaments. He hummed softly to himself, a rhythm that seemed to calm the armor. Why do you hum? Zarentha asked, tilting her head. It helps the circuits align, he said. And, well, it keeps me calm. Curious, she said. She reached out and touched one of the glowing plates. The metal pulsed faintly under her fingers, acknowledging her presence. Your touch. It is different. Gentler than my own people's, David didn't answer. He knew that his touch had earned the armor's trust in a way hers had not. That truth was unspoken between them, hanging in the warm air of the forge. Hours passed. The armor's glow grew stronger. Every repaired section hummed with life. David cleaned a stubborn energy line when suddenly a soft alarm buzzed from his portable scanner. He frowned. Someone is tampering with the side conduits. Not now. Before he could react, the chamber shook violently. Sparks flew from the wall and a small explosion erupted near the armor. Alarms blared. Smoke filled the room. Intruders! Zarentha roared. She leaped forward with impossible speed, towering over David and the armor. Her wings flared. 2 Thalkiri engineers had tried to sabotage the work, jealous of the human's skill. They were armed with plasma wrenches, intent on destroying the delicate circuits and making it look like an accident. David acted instantly. He dove toward the armor, throwing himself over it to shield it. The blast hit the floor, sending shards of molten metal and sparks into the air. Heat scorched his uniform, but he didn't move. "David!" the Queen shouted, but she didn't stop the attackers yet. She was calculating, observing how this fragile human protected her most sacred artifact. The armor glowed. Its golden light expanded, forming a protective bubble around David. The energy pulsed like a heartbeat, pushing back the flames. Sparks fizzled harmlessly against its surface. The attackers froze, stunned. The armor had responded. It wasn't just a tool anymore. It was alive, and it recognized loyalty. After the smoke cleared, David stood up, coughing, soot covering his face. The armor was unharmed. The intruders had fled, shaking with fear. Zarentha approached, her wings folded tightly behind her back. She touched David's shoulder, careful not to disturb his work. "You are reckless," she said, her voice low. "Yet you are brave, perhaps even stronger than you appear." David smiled faintly. "I couldn't let it die again. Not after everything it's been through." Her gaze softened. For the first time, she spoke to him not as a ruler to a subject, but as someone recognizing the courage of another. "Your heart is unusual human. It beats in sync with the forge." The next days passed in a rhythm of work and observation. David repaired each piece of the armor slowly, meticulously, while Zarentha assisted him in ways she hadn't considered before. She adjusted energy fields, aligned conduits, and even suggested subtle tweaks that only she could sense, thanks to her connection to the armor. Other engineers began to watch silently, whispering to each other. They had expected failure. Instead, they saw the Queen and a human working together, each complementing the other's strengths. Slowly, respect replaced envy. David noticed it too. He adjusted the armor's chest plate one last time, activating the main power core. The energy inside the armor surged, glowing brighter than ever. It pulsed in response to the Queen's presence, adding faintly to David's touch as well. "See?" he said softly. "It's alive, and it responds to both of us now." Zarentha's eyes glowed. "Alive and willing. So it is true. You have awakened what we thought was lost forever." They stood together in silence, the golden glow bathing the forge. Outside, the palace was calm. Inside, something extraordinary had happened. 2 species had begun to understand each other through patience, courage, and trust. But not everyone was pleased. Lord Trask continued to fume. He whispered to other nobles, spreading doubt and fear. "A human dares to touch the Queen's armor. It is unnatural. If she allows it to continue, our traditions will crumble." One evening, David overheard the conversation while walking through the corridors. He frowned but didn't respond. He had learned that interfering with alien politics was dangerous. For now, his focus had to be on the armor and the Queen. Meanwhile, the Queen reflected on her feelings. She was conflicted. She had spent centuries relying on strength, command, and fear to maintain loyalty. But this human had no rank, no authority. Yet he had done what her entire empire could not. Her armor pulsed brighter in the forge, almost as if it sensed her inner thoughts. She admitted in a whisper to herself, "Perhaps strength is not only in dominance. Perhaps it is in patience and courage." Days later, a small ceremony was planned in the palace. The Queen called David forward to present the repaired armor to her court. The chamber filled with Thalkiri nobles, their eyes wide with disbelief. They had expected failure. They had expected humiliation for the human. Instead, they saw the armor glow golden, whole and vibrant as if it had never been broken. Zarentha raised her voice. "Behold, my armor is restored. And it was a human and a single engineer, one who gave it life. Gasps filled the chamber. The nobles whispered furiously. Some were angry, others amazed. But none could deny the truth. David stood quietly, humbly, as the queen continued. Let this be known. Strength can come from unexpected places. Valor is not measured by species, but by heart. He glanced at the queen. She gave him a subtle nod. Respect, recognition, and gratitude all in one. For the first time, David felt that the gap between their worlds had narrowed. Trust had been earned, loyalty had been proven, and a bond, fragile but real, had been formed between human and Thalkiri. That night, David returned to his small quarters. His hands were sore, his uniform burned and blackened, but he smiled. He had done more than repair armor. He had forged understanding. Outside, the twin moon shone over the palace. The Thalkiri city lay quiet, unaware that a quiet revolution had begun inside the forge. One human had earned the queen's respect. One human had awakened an ancient artifact. And one human had proven that courage and patience could bridge worlds. In the forge, the armor pulsed gently, as if alive. Its heartbeat was steady, warm, and somehow, it seemed to hum with human determination. David whispered to himself, a habit he had developed over long nights of repairs. Not bad for a human. Sarantha, standing outside the forge, watched the glow of her restored armor. For the first time in decades, she felt hope, not just for her armor, but for her people. Somewhere deep inside, she knew the human had changed more than just her armor. He had changed her. The palace of Vexillon was alive with tension. Word had spread throughout the Thalkiri court. A human had repaired the queen's sacred armor. Some whispered in admiration, others in fear. Whispers turned to suspicion and suspicion to anger. Lord Trask had begun openly plotting. He gathered nobles who feared the human's influence. If the queen allows this human to touch the armor, she undermines our traditions, he hissed. We will be nothing but whispers in the void if this continues. But the queen remained unmoved. Standing in the royal chamber, her repaired armor gleaming golden under the lights, she said simply, the human has earned his place. No one shall question my decision. David Harlan stood beside her, silent but alert. He had become accustomed to the queen's presence, even to the intimidating weight of her gaze. He had repaired the armor not just with skill but with patience and loyalty. Yet he knew the danger of political unrest. Days later, the peace of the city shattered. Scouts reported the arrival of an enemy fleet, the Ralkan, a species known for their ruthlessness and speed. They had taken advantage of the Thalkiri Empire's weakened state after the recent war. The queen called for an emergency council. Her repaired armor now radiated power, humming with life as if aware of her commands. Her voice cut through the room. We face the Ralkan fleet. I will lead the battle. David, you will accompany me. The armor is not complete, but it will need your guidance. David blinked. Guidance? Your Majesty, you're the warrior. I'm the engineer. You have awakened this armor. Zarentha interrupted sharply. Your mind is connected to its circuits. You will guide its power in battle or it may fail. David exhaled. Right. Okay. Let's do this. The following morning, the skies over Vexillon were filled with enemy ships. Their dark hulls cut across the red and gold clouds like shadows. The Thalkiri fleet was smaller, scattered, but the queen did not hesitate. She strode onto the command bridge, her repaired armor gleaming, energy lines glowing gold. David followed, carrying tools, scanners, and a portable control unit that interfaced with the armor. As they prepared for launch, Lord Trask approached. Your Majesty, he said, bowing stiffly, a human guiding your sacred armor? Are you certain this is wise? Zarentha's eyes flared. Do not question me, Trask. Stand aside. The nobles and engineers hesitated, but none dared oppose her. David glanced at the queen. She gave a subtle nod. His heartbeat quickened. This was not just repair work anymore. This was survival. Once the battle began, the queen's armor shone like a beacon. Enemy fire struck her hull, but the golden glow of the energy shield absorbed the blasts. David's hands flew across the portable console, redirecting energy through the armor's circuits, balancing power between offense and defense. David, increase the dorsal shield. The queen commanded, her voice calm and precise. He complied instantly, rerouting energy from the armor's auxiliary conduits. Sparks danced along the metal plates, but the shield expanded, deflecting a volley of plasma. The Ralcon fleet faltered for a moment, unprepared for this synchronized attack. They had faced the Thalkiri before, but never a queen whose armor responded to two minds at once, alien and human. In the chaos, one of the enemy ships broke formation and charged directly at the capital. The queen's instinct screamed to intercept. David's eyes widened. The armor can handle it, but not without full energy balance. I need a moment. Then act. Zarentha snapped, her wings flaring. David worked furiously. He traced energy lines, recalibrated conduits, and engaged the bioreactive circuits. The armor hummed, responding to his commands, glowing brighter than it had ever glowed before. The queen leapt into action, armor plates locking with a resonant click. The energy shield flared, deflecting incoming fire. Golden light streaked across the battlefield as she soared toward the enemy ship. David's heart raced. Every adjustment mattered. One wrong move and the armor could overload, or worse, fail entirely. As the queen engaged the enemy, she realized something remarkable. Her armor, once a simple symbol of power, now responded to her trust in another. David's presence and guidance amplified her strength. She could feel his mind inside the circuits, steadying them, connecting to the energy in ways she never could alone. This is extraordinary, she murmured. David's voice crackled over the comm link. Keep it steady. Use the left dorsal thrusters to angle the shield. I'm rerouting auxiliary power to the chest plate. She followed his instructions with precision, dodging plasma blasts and slashing through the enemy ship's shields. The battle had become a dance. Human and queen working as one through the living armor. The enemy faltered, confused by the strange synchronization. The Ralcon fleet retreated, unable to anticipate the combination of Thalkiri skill and human ingenuity. Back on the capital's surface, the citizens watched as their queen returned victorious. Her armor gleamed with golden light, unbroken, alive, and more powerful than ever. The humans and Thalkiri engineers cheered. Some nobles, including Lord Trask, remained silent, their pride wounded but forced to acknowledge the truth. The queen dismounted from her armor, breathing heavily but triumphant. She looked at David. You saved the battle. Not just my armor, but the city, the empire. David shrugged. I just did what I could. You did the real fighting. She stepped closer, her golden armor casting a radiant glow over him. You risked your life to protect what is sacred. Your courage is not ordinary. David smiled faintly. Guess that makes me special, huh? She allowed herself a faint smile. Indeed. The days following the battle were tense but hopeful. The queen's armor had proven itself, and the humans' role in the victory could not be denied. Even the most skeptical nobles began to accept him, slowly, grudgingly. David continued his work in the forge, fine-tuning the armor, making it stronger, more responsive, safer. Zarentha often joined him, adjusting energy conduits and offering insights only she could perceive. Their partnership was no longer strange. It had become essential. Late one night, after a long day of repairs, the queen spoke quietly. David, why do you stay? You could leave, return to your people. Why remain in a place that does not fully accept you? He looked at her, tired but unwavering. Because it matters. What we're doing here, it matters. And because I think we can make something better, together, for both our peoples. She studied him silently. You are remarkable, perhaps even my equal in ways I did not expect. David smiled faintly. Well, I do have some practice with impossible machines. Her laughter was soft, rare, and warm. The kind of sound that made even the cold forge feel alive. But not all threats were over. Lord Trask and his allies continued to scheme. They feared the queen's growing respect for a human, and whispers of rebellion grew. The queen knew she had to trust David completely if the empire was to remain safe. And she did. Her eyes glowed as she looked at her repaired armor. Golden light pulsed steadily, in rhythm with the energy of her city, and with the human engineer who had taught it to trust again. David adjusted a tiny conduit. It's perfect, almost. Almost? She asked, raising an eyebrow. Just needs one final bond, he said, motioning toward the central core. I need you to focus. Trust me completely. Then it will be fully alive. Zarentha hesitated. She had always trusted herself above all others. But she looked at David, at the man who had saved her armor, her life, and her city, and nodded. "I trust you," David smiled. "Good, let's finish this together." They worked side by side. The golden light of the armor surged, brighter and warmer than ever before. Energy hummed like a heartbeat resonating through the chamber. The armor was fully alive, fully bonded to both human and queen. Outside, the twin moons of Vexilon shone, reflecting in the golden light of the forge. A new alliance had been forged, not through politics or fear, but through courage, trust, and understanding. The queen whispered, almost to herself, "Perhaps strength is not only in might, but in who you choose to trust." David, wiping sweat from his brow, glanced at her. "And sometimes," he said quietly, "it's the unexpected people who change everything." The forge hummed in response, alive with energy, alive with the bond of two worlds now intertwined. The skies above Vexilon had cleared, leaving the twin suns casting golden light across the capital. The city had survived another attack, but the tension lingered. Nobles whispered, guards watched carefully, and citizens gawked at the gleaming palace. Inside, Queen Zarentha stood before her fully restored armor. It glowed brighter than ever, alive with the bond between her and the human who had repaired it. Golden light pulsed through every plate, every circuit, as if the armor had finally found its heart. Beside her, David Harlan wiped soot and sweat from his hands. His uniform was streaked with grime, but his eyes were bright. He had worked tirelessly, guiding the Queen's armor through the battle, repairing sabotage, and ensuring it could respond not only to her commands, but also to his subtle adjustments. For the first time, the Queen allowed herself a moment of calm. She touched the armor, feeling its warmth. "It is more than I imagined," she said softly. David nodded. "It's alive now, fully, and it trusts both of us." She studied him, her sharp eyes softened with admiration. "You risked everything to repair it, to protect it. You risked yourself." "I couldn't let it die," he said simply. "Not after all it's been through. Not after everything you've been through." The Queen's eyes glimmered. She had ruled for decades, seen betrayal, war, and death. She had trusted few. But this human, he was different. The court had gathered for a formal audience. Nobles filed in reluctantly, their gazes alternating between the Queen and the human who had dared touch the sacred armor. Lord Trask stood in the back, his face tight with anger and disbelief. "Your Majesty," he said finally, his voice trembling, "do you intend to elevate this human above your own people?" The Queen's voice was cold, unwavering. "He is not above anyone. He is beside me, because he has earned it." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Many were shocked. Some were curious. David shifted slightly, unaccustomed to the attention, but he stood tall. Zarentha continued, her golden armor glowing faintly as if amplifying her words. "The one who repaired my armor did not do so for glory or rank. He did so out of dedication, loyalty, and courage. That is strength. That is honor. And that is what I value." The nobles were silent. Even Lord Trask's jaw tightened. The Queen's decision was final. That evening, the Queen summoned David to the forge. "There is one final test," she said, her tone serious. David raised an eyebrow. "Another battle?" "No," she replied, "but a challenge of trust. The armor is fully restored now. It can act on its own in battle, but it is still connected to you. If it malfunctions, if its bond breaks, the consequences could be catastrophic." David set down his tools. "I understand. What do you want me to do?" She stepped forward, her massive form reflecting in the golden light. "I want you to integrate fully with the armor. Not just the circuits, your mind, your intent. Only then will it be truly alive and truly ours." David swallowed. He had guided the armor before, but merging fully? That was new. "Dangerous, perhaps. I'll do it," he said. "Let's make it perfect." Hours passed. David connected his neural interface to the armor's biocircuits. Energy hummed and surged, golden light flickering in response to his heartbeat. He focused, letting go of fear, doubt, and hesitation. Every adjustment, every mental command became part of the armor's consciousness. The Queen observed silently. Her armor pulsed with life, stronger than it had ever been. She could feel the connection between human and machine, a bond formed through trust, courage, and persistence. Finally, the integration was complete. David stepped back, breathing heavily but smiling faintly. "It's done," he said. The armor's glow steadied, warm and alive. It was no longer just a tool of war. It was a living entity, responsive, adaptive and stronger than either the Queen or David could have imagined alone. Sharentha approached, her eyes bright with respect. "You have not only repaired my armor," she said, "but you have given it life, and in doing so, given our people hope." News of their success spread quickly. Citizens of Vexilon came to see the Queen's shining armor and the human who had saved it. They cheered for him, clapped, and whispered stories of courage. Even soldiers who had once doubted the human bowed their heads in respect. Lord Trask and the dissenting nobles could no longer hide their awe. Even their whispered criticisms had been silenced by the undeniable bond they witnessed. The Queen turned to David. "You could ask for anything, human. Gold, land, rank?" David shook his head. "I only want to keep learning, to share knowledge, to help both our peoples build something better." She considered this. Then she smiled faintly. "Very well. You shall have that chance, and more if you wish it." The two stood together in the forge, golden light washing over them. Around them, the palace hummed with life, energy, and possibility. Months passed. David remained on Vexilon, assisting in the integration of human technology with Thalkiri systems. The Queen's armor had become a symbol not only of strength but of unity. Humans and Thalkiri learned from each other. Cities rebuilt faster, defenses strengthened, and new innovations emerged. But more than that, a personal bond had formed between human and Queen, not of romance or dominance, but mutual respect, trust, and understanding. They had faced impossible challenges together, a human repairing a Queen's sacred armor, guiding it in battle, and ultimately helping to protect an entire civilization. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the palace, the Queen stood with David on a balcony overlooking the city. The glow of Vexilon reflected in their eyes. "You have changed more than my armor, David," she said quietly. "You have changed me, and my people," David smiled faintly. "Maybe we just needed to understand each other. And sometimes that starts with something small, on a spark, a broken piece of metal, and someone willing to care." She nodded. "Yes, a spark, and you became the flame." The armor, fully restored and alive, glimmered in the forge below. It pulsed gently as if acknowledging their bond. No longer just a symbol of war, it had become a living testament to courage, patience, and the power of unexpected alliances. David leaned against the balcony rail. "So I guess I'm officially the Queen's engineer now?" She gave a faint, approving nod. "Indeed. The one who repaired my armor shall always have a place beside me. Not above, not below, but beside me." For the first time in centuries, the Queen felt a deep sense of peace. Her armor was whole. Her city was safe. And she had learned that sometimes the smallest, most unexpected hands can change the fate of worlds. The twin moons reflected on the polished golden plates of the armor below, shining like a promise. A human and a queen, two species intertwined by courage, trust, and the quiet power of understanding.